All right, today's lesson is on fraction benchmarks, and I wanted to pull up the definition for you here of a benchmark. A benchmark is just a point of reference so that you can compare something against it. So for example, if you think of a ruler and you've got all those little lines on a ruler, those are all little benchmarks. If you think of a glass of orange juice and you've got about half a glass, well, how do you know where that halfway point is? That halfway point is what you call a benchmark. If you are doing track and field and there's white lines that mark off 200 meters, 400 meters, and so on, those are benchmarks so that you can compare other distances or other things to those benchmarks. So with that in mind, we're going to do some fraction benchmarks, and that will be a way that we can use to find equivalent fractions and compare fractions and so on. So let's get started. This is your assignment. It says here, write the fraction above each part of each strip below. Color the first part of each strip. In red, I've given you some extra instructions here to help you do it on the computer. So first of all, the text boxes are all in blue. Don't be confused by that, and the strips are in between here. So this first strip has been divided into two parts. So remember, a fraction is a part of a whole. It's got one part shaded, and you can see I've got 0 over 2, or 0 out of 2 parts at the very beginning, or I could have just put 0. In the middle here I have 1 over 2. That's because I've got one part out of a total of 2, and yes, we call that a half. And at the end here it's 2 out of 2, or in other words, 1 whole. So our next strip here, we're going to look at this strip below, and you can see it's divided into 3 parts. And so our first job is to type in the fractions above each part. Well, at the very beginning here, and it says up here to double click in each text box to type in the fractions. So let's double click in here, and now my cursor is flashing and I can go ahead and type in my fraction. So at the very beginning I don't have anything. I have 0 parts out of 3. This first part here, I've come to the first marker, and that shows me that I have 1 over 3, or 1/3, that is noted by this mark. At the second mark, of course, you can see where I'm going here with this. Oops, and my cursor is just too far. There we go. So 2 over 3, or 2/3, and finally at the end here, if I had the whole thing shaded, it would be 3 over 3, or 1 whole. So that's the first part of the instructions here, is to put in the fractions at the top of each part. And so you can see on this next one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So your denominator would be 4. So 0 out of 4, 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, and so on. The next part of the instructions ask you to color in the first section, insert a text box, then paint fill it with any color you choose. So what we're trying to do here is just get a visual for how big 1/3 is, and we're going to compare that with 1/2. So all I'm going to do, and it says here, to color in the first section, insert a text box. Well, this T is a text box, so I can click on this, or I could go to insert. It doesn't matter. Click on insert, go to text box, and then I have these crosshairs here, and I'm going to put that at the corner, the top corner of the first box that I want to make here. And there is my box. Now I don't need to type anything in here. All I need to do is fill it with a color. And so all you're going to do here is you're going to go up to this little paint can and click on it, and then you get to pick whatever color you want. And so I'm going to pick a nice blue, and there is my 1/3. So you would continue going through this each section, each line, each fraction strip, doing the exact same thing. On the second page, we're going to use these fraction benchmarks to figure out which fraction, which benchmark each fraction is closest to. There's some directions up here in red, so let's have a look together. It says first divide the line into sections. The denominator tells you how many. Use the insert line command to draw a line. So let's just stop right there. So I've got this line that goes from 0 to 1, and I've got a benchmark here of half drawn, and I'm supposed to put 5/10 here. But before I get there, I need to draw a line. So I need to divide this line into 10 equal parts. Okay, so you know that half of 10 is 5, so that conveniently is going to be right here in the middle. So I'm going to go to insert up here. I can do insert, and I can go to line here and just pick the line. Or I can do something a little quicker. Sorry about that. I can go to this little button right here. This is the line icon. I click on it, and then I can divide this up. So with my best guess here, I'm going to divide this into 5 parts. So that means I really only need 4 lines. So there's 2. And here's a third one, and I'm trying my best to keep these parts even. And there's the 4th. So right now I have 0 out of 10, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10 is the last line I drew. This one in the middle would be 5/10, so I don't need to draw another line here. Let's keep going. That one would be 6/10, and I'm clicking line each time. 7/10, 8/10. I think mine are not going to look so even here. 9/10, and then of course this last one would be 10/10, or in other words, 1. Okay, so then I've done the first 2 things here. First, divide the line into sections, use the insert line command to draw lines, then type the fraction below the correct line in the gray text box. So I've got this text box here for you. When I click on it, it turns blue. And I'm supposed to put 5/10 underneath here. So I'm going to double click in here, and then I can just move my cursor to wherever I want to put this fraction. And I know that 5/10, I can count on the lines, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10. So I know that my 5/10 fraction should be right in the middle, because 5 is half of 10. If you want to be specific here, you can underline your top line and the top number, and that'll give you at least the look of the fraction there. And then it says finally, up here, finally answer which benchmark the fraction is closest to. Okay, well, is 5/10 closer to 0, closer to a half, or closer to 1? Well, this is pretty simple, this one, because 5/10 is not only close to a half, but it is right on it. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 1/2, and it's going to make that fancy little half for me, and that's just fine. So for each of these examples, you are going to do the exact same thing. Divide the line by inserting lines, type the fraction where it should be, and then finally answer which benchmark the fraction is closest to. So if we have the number 7/10, I know it's going to be up here because 7 is near 10, right? Or 9/10 or 8/10. Those are going to be close to 1. A fraction that would be close to 0 would be 1/10, because I have a small numerator over the big denominator. So if you have a small number, it's going to be down here. If you have a number that's bigger, closer to the total amount of the parts that you have, it's going to be up here. All right, so that is fraction benchmarks and fractions on a number line. Good luck with your assignment.